is extremely competitive. And one of the things, Jeff, I know you and I talked about when I saw the boat run in person, and I know you were watching it online, it's the speed with which this boat gets into and out of the corners. Everybody seems to be commenting about it. What they've done different in that boat, who knows, but it sure seems to be quick getting into, getting around, and getting out of the corners. And you and I both know how important that is on any race course that we run.
That is key with these big 6,700-pound H1 unlimited hydroplanes. The cornering ability, it looks like crew chief Cindy Shirley and the Home Street team. Of course, the late Dan Hoover began construction on this craft, along with Trey Holt, who is on the Miss Madison Home Street team. And then Larry and Mike Henson came in to finish the hull completion. Jimmy Labrie assisted with some painting. And Brad, it's a beauty, a brand new one on the tour. And as you mentioned, it corners just fine.
For those that remember the previous hull, there is a little bit of a difference with the color scheme, if you will, on the deck of this boat. The decking right above the sponsons on the previous hull was painted in the Home Street powder blue. The decking in the same spot above the sponsons on this hull is all Home Street written in the black lettering. So the name pops a little bit more for the photographers and the sponsor on the boat. That's about the only difference you'll see. But either way, old one, new one, whatever you want to look at this boat and make your comments about it, it's a quick one.
And of course, they have a new website, Brad. I spoke to Mark yesterday, part of the Miss Home Street Bank team. New website for the Miss Madison. It's www.missmadisonhydro.com, and they can also be found on Facebook at Miss Madison Unlimited Hydroplane. And Brad, you're very familiar with the sponsor, Home Street Bank, based out of Seattle, traded on the NASDAQ with the ticker symbol HMST.
Yeah, they're a big name in the Pacific Northwest, and as we started talking a couple of years ago, when Home Street was out here for the first time, I was having a lot of fun with our fans from Detroit, who are fans, of course, of the great Detroit Lion football club here. Home Street, a bank, your Seattle City.
And that's coming up soon as well. We're into the preseason with the NFL, and regular season kicking off, September 6th, Mr. Luce, a Thursday night game.
Yeah, it's come very, very quickly. We will be NFLing as it would be. That season's going to kick off. But the first thing we got to do here in Detroit is run for the, and I love to say this, Jeff, you know how much I do, the oldest active motorsports trophy in the world, the APBA Gold Cup.
Of course, the first one run in 1904. Mr. Riot won that one, Brad. Then later on that year, they ran a second.
That's one of the great trivia questions about the APBA Gold Cup. Everybody knows the first one was run in 1904, and the question is, when was the second one? And you just answered it there, a little later on the same year. So we're getting ready here for some H1 action on the water. It is the Metro Detroit Chevy Dealers Hydro Fest presenting the for the APBA Gold Cup.
And Brad Luce, you know, of course, the I-1000 has been in action up here at the judges' stand. I wanted to thank Vicki McDowell listening to us online back home in Madison, Indiana. And, of course, Rob Holt is here this weekend. Brad, also from Madison. He's my boss for the Madison Vintage Thunder. That is coming up the next to the last weekend in September. Vintage hydroplanes back on the Ohio River in Madison next to last weekend in September, and that will be the third try with that in Madison. And Brad, so far we've had a nice event down there with the vintage folks.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a lot of fun. I've been following it from afar out in the Pacific Northwest, but it appears to be an event that's gaining some momentum, and that's always a good thing. So if you're in that area the last weekend in September, I think that's what you said, Jeff, it's a great little event down there. Come down to the river, and I know you'll be down there, Jeff. It's a good time.
Yeah, we've had a lot of fun with that in the first 2 years, looking for a successful third year with Madison Vintage Thunder. And speaking of Vintage Thunder, we have a dynamite 4-boat Vintage Unlimited fleet in the Horace E. Dodge pit area. Brad, I'm looking forward to seeing our 4 spoonbow Vintage Unlimiteds out here on the Detroit River this weekend. And plus, we'll have an extra added twist between the Gale 5 and the Miss Thriftway.
Absolutely we will, and we're going to talk about that 55 and 56 Gold Cup. But look to your left, Jeff Ayler. Finally, we have an H1 Unlimited hydroplane away from the Dockbird. Henderson in the bright red. Boat number 7. You should have him in your view right. Oh, and just like that, he's losing power, but I'm sure he will re-spool. Good to have our first H1 Unlimited on the water. A lot of folks and fans have gotten close to the fence here, Jeff, to get a good look at this and a good photo op when he pulled away from the pit area. But he's coming right down now in front of you, and again, just as he was about to step it up on plane, we get that big puff of smoke and it drops back down.
And Brad, I'll be without speeds after the run. I'll try to go upstairs and get some times for our fans here along the shoreline, and of course listening at home and watching online through H1 Unlimited. We'd like to thank Jared and Tate Meyer providing the video online this weekend for H1 Unlimited. Brad, it's their first trek to Detroit for the Gold Cup. Welcome.
Yeah, absolutely welcome to those 2 young gentlemen. They do a terrific job for H1 Unlimited, and if you have been enjoying H1 Unlimited videos on YouTube, those are the 2 young men that are putting them together, and they are very dedicated. They are very knowledgeable about what they do, and they do just an outstanding job. You're right, this is their first trip to the Motor City, and I can tell you that Tate Meyer up here, or at least he was earlier, he was up here atop the pit tower. He is very anxious. Unlimited hydroplane come through the Rooster Tail turret.
And Bert Henderson having trouble getting a light to the Lycoming turbine engine underneath the engine cowling for the U7 Spirit of Detroit, Tri-Island Energy, Detroit Machinery Center. Brad, he gets a hit, and then it seems like it loses fuel, and then we see the smoke coming out of the back of the hull through the pipe, and this is about the 6th time that has happened. So we'll see if Bert elects to continue to try down the front straightaway or maybe crank it to the left there in the Grand Prix course as he gives it one more try. Come on, Bert! Still doing the same thing, Brad. It'll light, runs for about 7 to 8 seconds, and then just goes silent, and then the smoke comes out the back. Bert Henderson still trying to get the U7 Spirit of Detroit, Tri-Island Energy, Detroit Machinery Center up into a planing activity, pointing the nose of the craft more toward the shoreline in front of the Whittier. Brad, you got a good look. He gives it close. Nope, there's that smoke once again coming out the transom. Brad, we mentioned Jared and Tate Meyer providing the online video this weekend for the Unlimiteds. Also, too, don't forget about Hydro News on Facebook. Lon Erickson here this weekend with Hydro News along with Kirk Duncan. They'll be giving updates as well all weekend via Facebook on Hydro News, and also, too, H1 Unlimited will be providing updates as well on their Facebook page. And now Brad Burt is cranked it to the left. And we'll see if he can get it back on, or try to get it up on plane, but nope. Once again, it's been the same sequence down in front of the Whittier. Starts and then puffs out.
Yeah, Jeff, there's been a lot of conversation up here atop the pit tower. His radio up here, and they've been conversing with Bert about trying different things, wondering if possibly they're not getting water over the front of the boat and getting back into the engine well, which is putting out the fire just as he starts to get up on a plane.
And this time we had a little flash of flame there on the back. So we'll see how much longer he elects to continue to try it. I'm sure they'd like to try to come back in under their own power, not be on the tow rope. But now, as you can see, watching online via H1 Unlimited, of course, in the infield. And Brad, that's a tough way for that team to start the weekend off. Your local hometown favorite here, the U7, owned by Dave Bardish from right here in Detroit. And of course, Brad, Dave has his name on that APBA Gold Cup. The 2005 winner, the U13 out DB Dodge, and we missed this gentleman that drove that craft, the late Terry Troxell, the winner of the 05 APBA Gold Cup. And Brad,
hey, here we go.
Hey!
Here we go. All you had to do was start about Dave Bardish and Terry Troxell, and we got it up. There we go. You talk about Terry winning that Gold Cup, and as you know, Jeff Ayler, I spent last week at the Terry Troxell Memorial Regatta over in eastern Washington in the beautiful little burg of Pateros, Washington. So fitting that we talk about Dave Bardish and the fact that he has been and is on the APBA Gold Cup. And here comes Bert. Got it up. Very, very good to see this boat back out on the Detroit River. And of course, the last time he was on the river had an issue out here that led to a whole lot of work in the off season to get this boat ready to go, when he had a collision here with J. Michael Kelly just before the start of the original final heat a year ago. And you've got him right in front of you. We got our first H1 Unlimited on the water, Jeff Ayler.
And Brad, like we've mentioned, about the past 45 minutes, the winds have subsided, and this is the best the water has looked since about 10:30 this morning, as Bert Henderson went ahead and elected to go through the Grand Prix course here on the Detroit River, straightens it up. So Brad, bring him up to you. The bright red U7 Spirit of Detroit, Tri-Island Energy Detroit Machinery Center.
Yes, Bert Henderson, he was out testing the Steeler, his 777 GP hydroplane earlier, so apparently he likes that race course a lot. So he went ahead and cut it a little bit short, comes off the rooster tail here. Boat sounds good. I think he's just trying to make sure that everything they've done to that boat is nailed down. Everything is solid. All the gauges are reading correctly. And it looks like he's going to turn again, Jeff.
A little compressor stall as he came by the start-finish line buoy, working back into turn number 1 on the Grand Prix course. And Brad, the Unlimiteds will not run on the tiny 1-miler. We will see him cut through the infield there.
Yep.
In the milling period activity when we go racing tomorrow and on Sunday, but we'll see if Bert elects to go down the full front chute this time. He's in front of you.
He is right in front of me, and if he had any trepidation going through the rooster tail turn after what happened to him a year ago, he's certainly burying that demon, because he's been through it about 4 times now, and looks like he's going to go left again. Got him right in front of you, Jeff.
So cutting through the GP course once again, our first Unlimited on the water for the 2018 Metro Detroit Chevy Dealers APBA Gold Cup. Brad, our qualifying session is still on from 5 until 7 this evening. I know, though, each team would like to take a crack to the water before they go qualifying at 5 bells.
Yeah, they sure would, and get out and just run some laps around the race course and make sure it is as they remember. So we'll see how well that works. We're, what are we looking at, about 3:40 right now. So we've still got some time here. And to your point, if the river would lay down and give us a good window here, say over the next hour and then before we go qualifying at 5, we have seen some terrific speeds on this race course. Certainly we saw a number of them last year during qualifying. If we get the water conditions, you know This will produce some pretty quick speeds.
So Bert Henderson looks like he'll point the nose of the U7 back to the pit dock. And Brad, I spoke to Bert yesterday, and Jeff Bernard, born in Allen Park, Michigan, now residing in Kent, Washington. Jeff is scheduled to be here this weekend to take some laps in time in the U7, and also to possibly enter a heat to keep his driver's license status up in the H1 series.
Yeah, I was talking to Jeff last week. I mentioned the event I worked in Eastern Washington, and I was speaking with Jeff Bernard over there. He will be catching the red eye out of Seattle tonight. So he will be in here very early tomorrow morning. So I suspect the guy in the pit area walking up and down with the toothpicks in his eyelids, that'll be Mr. Bernard tomorrow morning.
Jeff's full-time position out in the Pacific Northwest is with Boeing. So hopefully he'll hop on a nice one to get into Detroit.
Yeah, I wonder if that'll help him get a better seat.
Possibly.
So Bert has shut the boat down here short of the pit area, and actually he is right out in front of the U1 Miss Home Street. And Jimmy is aboard the Home Street blue and white boat out of the Pacific Northwest, based out of Madison, Indiana. Your boat, Jeff, it's sitting in the water. Jimmy is aboard. The lid is still open, and I think they're just going to wait until Bert gets out of the way, and we will have our defending Gold Cup champion out on the river.
Brad, I got those dates from Rob Holt. Madison Vintage Thunder, Saturday, September 22nd, Sunday, September 23rd, on the Ohio River in Madison, Indiana. Thank you, Rob. As Bert Henderson is out of the cockpit, waiting for the safety and rescue team to throw a rope to the 7. We'll get them towed into a safe position. And as Brad mentioned, up next will be the brand new U1 Miss Home Street Bank with Jimmy Shane driving. Brad, Jimmy, the native of Havre de Grace, Maryland, now resides in Maple Valley, Washington. 17 career unlimited wins for Jimmy Shane as he keeps creeping on up that ladder in the H1 all-time driver standings.
Yeah, we talk about it every year, and I know you saw Jimmy do a lot of racing before he got to the H1 ranks. You knew this kid was something special. The first time he climbed aboard an H1 Unlimited, I was there when he got qualified in the Tri-Cities. And we just knew very quickly that with the right equipment, this kid was really going to be something special, and he has not disappointed. Already got 3 Gold Cups to his name, and he is looking to add a 4th this weekend. They've had a little disappointment, Jeff. Out west, it didn't go the best for him, and they are looking to get back on track here on the Detroit River.
Shane, a 3-time Gold Cup winner, as Brad mentioned. 2014 right here in Detroit in the Oberto. 2015 in Oberto in Tri-Cities, Washington. And, of course, Jimmy Shane is your defending APBA Gold Cup champion right here last year in the U1 Miss Home Street Bank. And Brad, Jimmy believes in fast and furious work on the weekends on the water. His full-time position is with Jeff Bezos with Blue Origin out in the Pacific Northwest, working on those items to send folks into space in the future.
That's what he does, but he now has, right now, he has the lid down on the home street, so he has been cleared to go by the officials up here atop the tower. And I think we are just about ready to roll here with our defending Gold Cup champion, 3-time Gold Cup champion, Jimmy Shane, driving a Miss Home Street, a.k.a. the Miss Madison. Jeff, you know this boat very, very well, but I don't think you've seen it yet on the water, and you're about to. And we're spooling the turbine right now, but nothing is happening. And now it is spooling down. He's still here at the dock, Jeff. The normally always reliable U1. Here he goes. He's spooling it up again. And it just doesn't seem to want to spool very high. Here we go. Here we go. I'm looking right down the back end of that exhaust cone from up here atop the tower and saw a little flame down there. I thought we were going to have a good hot start and get him out, but it has tooled back down now.
So crew chief for the Miss Home Street Bank, Brad, Cindy Shirley, first ever female crew chief to get a win in the H1 Unlimited Hydroplane Series. Happened earlier this year at the Indiana Governor's Cup in Madison, Indiana. Of course, the boat owners are listed as the citizens of Madison, Indiana. They're represented by President Charlie Grooms, and Brad, of course, still a huge team member is Bob Hughes from Clifty Engineering at Miss Madison Inc. Saw Bob earlier today. You're looking good, and I know he likes the looks of this new racecraft, Brad.
Well, you have to like the look of this new racecraft, and they are unable to get it started, and they are going to throw in the towel here right now. They've now got a line back on the bow. The boat never left the slip. They were still holding on to the verticals, at least on the right side of the boat. They were holding on to it because it was not leaving, and they started to smell that maybe it wasn't going to get away. So the boat is still here at the dock. Jimmy has not popped the lid.
Head scratcher on that one, Brad. I'm real surprised.
Well, but you talked about Cindy Shirley and the fact that this is a three-time Gold Cup champion team here with Jimmy Shane behind the wheel, and obviously this boat very, very competitive, or this team, if anybody can fix it, they will. They want to come out here and run, and as I mentioned earlier, they've had some issues out west. It didn't go that well for them, Jeff Ayler. They're really looking to turn things around here this weekend at the Gold Cup.
So, problems with your defending Gold Cup champion, the U1 Miss Home Street Bank, here in unlimited hydroplane testing. We mentioned earlier, qualifying for the Metro Detroit Chevy Dealers APBA Gold Cup is scheduled this afternoon at 5 o'clock. And Mr. Luce, it'll be a 2-hour session up until 7 p.m. here this evening in Detroit. 3:35 on my watch here at the Garwood Judges Stand overlooking the Detroit River. 2.72 mile course for the Unlimiteds here in Detroit. The Grand Prix from the Hydroplane Racing League will run the 1 mile track. Brad, it's such a challenging course. We've been fortunate to call several Gold Cups here, and this river, and it can turn things around for a team maybe below the top two. Sometimes
big hot start out of the home street. We got it.
Got it.
We got it lit with a lot of flame and a lot of color, and still a lot of flame and a lot of color out the back end of that race boat. And there, that goes away, and our defending Gold Cup champion is away from the dock still with a couple of flames just brewing right there on the back deck, right underneath the horizontal.
Sure, it's a great photo op for our photographers. I'm sure Mr. Denslow, Crisp, and Erickson was down there. We'll see if they captured those images of that flame as Brad described coming out of the brand new U1 Miss Home Street Bank is Jimmy Shane. He cuts through the Grand Prix course as well, Brad.
Did you and I not get a memo about the race course?
Boy, if they run on this one this weekend, this will be Bristol on water here in Detroit.
All right, here comes Jimmy, you know, and everybody was kind of expecting, as long as it took to get the home street lit, I think they were all kind of expecting that there was going to be a lot of unspent fuel back there, and if they did light it, it was going to be hot with a lot of flame, and nobody was getting too close to the exhaust cone of the U1 Miss Home Street, but he's on the course and he's going to go. Well, I thought he was going to. Jeff?
Maybe we didn't get the memo. Maybe the water passed the Whittier and down to the Belle Isle Bridge turn. And Brad, that has been suspect on this race course in the past. We've seen several blowovers down there, but I might run up top here after the Madison runs to see if this is what they're doing, just running the short course.
I got it. I got it, Jeff. There are some paddle boarders down at the far end of the race course that have shown up. And so for safety purposes, they're telling the guys to stay on the small course. I just got that officially here atop the tower from H1.
Thank you, Brad. Great work. And well, this would be exciting to see these big, giant, unlimited hydroplanes run this mile oval. And he can put the chili to it.
Put the GPs out there with him, we could really have fun. Jimmy's getting a good idea how this rooster tail turn works. So yeah, pretty quick straightaway. Comes off the corner for me, and he's right in front of you, Jeff.
Of course, the unlimited hydroplanes, the world's fastest racing boats, 30 foot in length, 14 foot wide, 6,700 pound of racing vessel. Brad speeds capable of 200 miles per hour. Of course, we're not seeing that here right now. We won't see it in competition. What do you think at the end of each shoot here in Detroit? $1.80, $1.85?
I would think so. That sounds about right. But whatever they do, when they run that long straightaway up the backstretch and come up here to the rooster tail turn, they come off that great big turn down there at Belle Isle where they don't scruff off very much speed. So they probably exit that Belle Isle turn with as much speed as they do on any race course. And then they've got that long straightaway. All of that adds up and means one thing. That means when they get in front of the Detroit Yacht Club, probably the fastest speeds we'll see all season long.
This is pretty neat, these great big hydroplanes in front of us here on this mile track. And Brad, the first time you and I met and worked the Gold Cup here was in 2007. I didn't go over where to hand them to you at the tower up here on this track. We'll just keep going.
Yeah. We'd have to make it like the GP racing we do. That was an interesting line that Jimmy took around the rooster tail turn that time. It was almost like he ran a bit of a timing mark there. And our fans will notice that he was coming off of the rooster tail turn prior, and he was slipping out wide and going from lane 1 out to about lane number 4. That time he came through the rooster tail in lane number 1, and he exited in lane number 1. Of course, that's what he's going to have to do when we go racing. Now we'll see what he's going to do. I think he's going to have a run to start finish line here with a much wider line through the corner this time. Grandstand fans, here you go. Jimmy Shane in the U1 home street.
Brad, I put the watch on him. What a photo op. He flies right here in front of the judges stand. Off the exit pin of turn number 2 on the outside lane to the start finish line buoy. Brad at about 6.5 seconds. So this is a valuable time for these drivers running this short course. They can work on those timing runs, entering turn number 2 or exiting turn number 2. Come to this line, Brad, as I like to say, at full tilt, full throttle.
Absolutely, that's what you want to do. Full tilt, full throttle, going to come way wide again. He's going to come way wide this time. Fans, give it up. Oh, Jimmy Shane's got the lid open this time. He's going to wave it at you coming by.
Oh, the fans like that. They thought he was going to put it to it. He just gave me a wave.
Well, wow. Nobody ever said he wasn't a showman and a good ambassador for the sport of H1 Unlimited Racing. Good job, Jimmy Shane.
Greg is down there from the Rowdies. He liked that as well. He gave it a fist bump. Looking good, sir. Good to see you. Thank you.
So we'll see what Mr. Shane wants to do. Hey, Jeff.
Yes, sir.
I've got an average lap speed for Jimmy Shane in the Home Street Bank on the GP course. You want to take a swing at it?
Let me take a swing at that, Brad. I'm going to say
he was running pretty wide.
Running pretty wide. I'm going to go at about the 142.385 clip.
It was a little less than that. But he's bringing it back into the dock here.
132.385 clip.
I think you hit it. I'm hearing 115. That was a 3/4. Thank you, Mr. Hooten, who says that was a 3/4 throttle in about lane 9. Yeah, okay. So it was about 1:15.
Oh, I'm rusty, Brad. I was way off trying to pick them speeds up here, but 2.72 mile course when they go out for qualifying between 5 and 7. No doubt the top two in the field, Brad, on paper, the U1 Miss Home Street Bank and the U9 Delta Real Track with Walleye Lake, Michigan's Andrew Tate in the cockpit. We could see both those boats exceed the 160 mile per hour barrier when we go qualifying this evening from 5 to 7.
Yeah, we certainly could. It was the radio man up here who we were joking with, Dan Walters. He was wanted to make sure everybody knew that was a very fast lap, just turned at 3/4 throttle on a very wide course. So Jimmy Shane is back to the dock. To your point, Jeff, about the two boats on paper that we would expect and certainly can, if the conditions are right, give us lap speeds north of 160 miles an hour when we get on the big course here at 5 o'clock. For those that will be getting ready for their boat race weekend and haven't already, if you'd like to see what can happen when the U9 Delta Real Track with Andrew Tate hooks up with Jimmy Shane driving to Miss Home Street, you might want to pull up on YouTube tonight and take a look at that first race of the season down in Guntersville, because I know you've seen it, Jeff. That was a wire-to-wire, side-by-side, deck-to-deck duel that everybody that watched it hoped would never end. But boy, that was something special.
That was a wonderful final, and what a way to bring unlimited hydroplane racing back to Guntersville, Alabama for the Southern Cup. First time the U-boats had ran in Guntersville since the late 1960s. And Brad, you were there, and the fans, they left excited. Matter of fact, they've already marked their date for next year in Guntersville for the 2019 Southern Cup, a very successful rebirth of unlimited hydroplane racing in Alabama.
I'll tell you what, Jeff, you mentioned it. I was fortunate enough to be down there. I got to work the event, and you talk about some of the most delightful people on the planet. There's this whole thing about Southern hospitality, and when those of us that were not from the area, when we were done with the racing and it came time to leave, we had kind of coined a couple of phrases down there, one of which was, there is such a thing as Southern hospitality, but then there's Guntersville hospitality, and it is a cut above. I'll tell you what, they were just the most gracious people. They were so excited. They were full of questions. Every time I put the mic down and walked away, I was just bombarded with questions. You know, why this, why that, who's this and who's that? And it was really, really a lot of fun. And I am the happiest guy that we get to go back there next year. I am looking forward to it. If you happen to be down in the southeast at that time of the year, and it's going to be toward the end of June, stick Guntersville on your calendar. You will not be sorry you did.
And they announced their race date the last weekend of June 2019, last week of June 2019, for the Southern Cup in Guntersville, Alabama. But Brad, we're here in Detroit for the Metro Detroit Chevy Dealers APBA Gold Cup. And once again, thank you, Metro Detroit Chevy Dealers, the title sponsor here in Detroit. We love you.
We do love you, Metro Detroit Chevy Dealers. We know of your participation in our sport. We're so happy to have you on board with us. They were our race sponsor of the year last year, Mr. Ayler. Didn't know if you do that, but
well deserved.
Absolutely it was. And at the H1 Awards banquet, we named them the sponsor of the year, and to your point, they were very well deserved. One last closing comment on Guntersville, Alabama. They had a contest down there before the boats came to town. They had to come up with a slogan for their race course and for their event. As you mentioned, it was the Race for the Southern Cup. And the slogan was, I think it was a 12-year-old young man who came up with the slogan, the South's Fastest Water. And boy, there was good reason to call it the South's Fastest Water. There have been world records set down there, both in jet boats. Of course, Roy Doobie in 1962 set the world straightaway speed record for a propeller-driven craft at 200.419 miles an hour, and that was a record that stood for over 30 years. So they had a claim to the South's Fastest Water. And right now, the I forget which exact record Andrew Tate set down there. I think it was a heat record. I think he set it in the first heat that we ran down there, north of 157 miles an hour on a 2.5-mile course for a 3-mile heat. Pretty impressive stuff.
Great way to bring hydroplane racing back to Alabama, as we've mentioned, and I know the folks there are looking forward to it next year in Guntersville. Brad, how is the pit activity looking? You know, I get messages up here in the I-1000. It's so great to be back here working with you in Detroit, and the request I've never got, and I won't mention who sent it to me, was wanting to know if I could sing a song, and that would probably be best if I did not over the airwaves.
Actually, I have no idea who gave you that request, but I'm going to turn my mic off right now. I'll turn it over to you, Jeff. Take it away.
Thank you, Brad.
What are you going to sing?
Well, we're not.
Oh, I thought you were going to. I was going to turn it off and listen.
No.
You asked about what's going on down here in the pit area, or up here, whatever it is. I'm upriver from you, so wow. In the shortest amount of words, I think I can answer that in 2 words. Not much right now. The 7 Detroit Machinery Center presents Spirit of Detroit is back up on the trailer. They've got the cowling off, and they have dove into the engine well on that one. Jimmy Shane's ride is back up on the trailer. The sling is unhooked. They still have the cowling aboard that one. And that's about it right now. We have a sling laying on the top of the U9, the Delta Reel Track, Andrew Tate's ride. But that doesn't look like it's going anywhere.
Gives us a chance too, Brad. We can mention our other 3 participants in the pit area. And so great to see the Big Red down on the end, the Rooster Tail U3, 60 years of parties. Ed Cooper's turbocharged Allison racer back in Detroit with Wales, Michigan's Jimmy King in the cockpit. And Brad, that's one that fans here in Detroit like, the throwback of the turbocharged Allison.
Well, they certainly do, and as you and I were talking this morning, there's certainly no reason to think that those guys can't win. That boat has won on this race course before, but with the condensed field that we've got, and you and I say it every year, if Jimmy King gets a good start in that boat and he gets an inside lane, you are going to have your hands full driving around that red piston boat. And wouldn't that be a fun story?
And the 3 team, and of course, Brad, fans of Unlimited Hydroplane Racing, would like to thank Diane and Tom Shaneth with the Rooster Tail, stepping on board to sponsor Ed Cooper's Craft out of Evansville. Of course, the Rooster Tail and the Rooster Tail Turn are very familiar sights in Unlimited Hydroplane Racing for all your proms, weddings, corporate events, anniversaries, parties. It's the Rooster Tail. Check them out online at www.roostertail.com.
And yep, I'm looking at the Rooster Tail from here. There's people over there. It is an iconic building here in Detroit and along the riverfront. And to your point, Jeff Ayler, great that they stepped up, the Shaneth family, and help us out here and help us out with sponsorship on the 3. I know you like that boat. You like that race team.
I'll tell you another boat I like here this weekend. They've been very consistent this season. And as the races go on in the 2018 H1 Unlimited Series, Brad, that's Chartreuse and Carnival Orange. Reliable Diamond Tool presents J&D's. Tom Thompson in the cockpit out of Cambridge, Maryland, driving for Shannon and Scott Rainey out of Edmonds, Washington. This is my dark horse here this weekend for the Gold Cup, the 11.
Well, as you say that, Mr. Ayler, there is a little more color on that boat right now, or at least right next door to it. The stars and bars, the red, white, and blue, the American flag is being flown, and now they're going to put it up there and wave it at us. Shannon, it looks awesome down there. And they are holding the American flag on the deck.
Jonathan Thompson here this weekend with a Reliable Diamond Tool. I know the Rainies welcome him and the team. And also here from J&D's Metal Fabrication, Vehicle Upfitting, Wes and Bernie Ward here this weekend at the Gold Cup. And Brad, you know J&D's well. They're right there in your hometown of Auburn, Washington.
They are. I am from Auburn, Washington, and I shamefully must say I have not been to their shop. I know where it is now. It is on the east side of the Auburn Municipal Airport, which, well, I like the sound of this statement, Jeff. Back when I was working, I used to drive almost right by them every day going down to the office, but
that was just 3 weeks ago. Hey, congratulations, by the way, on your retirement. Fans in the pit area and along the shoreline, this gentleman is just such a gem to work with. He is retired from his real job. Let's give a round of applause for Brad Luce on retirement.
Wow, thank you, Jeff Ayler.
Love you, brother.
I love you too, man. This is a lot of fun. People thought I was retiring from doing this. I said, oh no, I'm retiring so I can go do this. That's what we do. So.
And the last boat, Brad, we got to mention is the Bright Orange, the consistent boat this year, the 440 Bucket List Racing, 2016 Rookie of the Year. Dustin Eccles drives out of Salton, Washington. Sharon and Kelly Stockland, the boat owners, out of Clearview, Washington. And Brad, things have been on the upside for the 440 this year. Dustin making dynamite starts, and they keep being consistent, and after this weekend, they should creep up the ladder more in the point standings.
Yeah, and that's really been the key. I mean, you talked about it. It's been consistency, and you said they've done some really good starts. They've done some really good finishes. And just the fact that every time, seemingly every time they put the boat in the water, they have brought it back to the dock and come back with some sort of points. And we all know how important that is. Now, when we go to the Tri-Cities, we actually run a Gold Cup format on the Columbia River out in the Tri-Cities, meaning we run 4 sections of preliminary heats, whereas a normal race that's not the Gold Cup, we only run 3, but they run 4 out there. And these guys earned their way into the final heat on the Columbia River at the Hapo Columbia Cup. They earned their way in against the largest field of H1 Unlimiteds that we've had on the water this year. And I remember interviewing a very happy driver, Dustin Eccles, on the dock when he got back, and that was my first statement to him. You know, you answered every bell, you finished every heat, you scored points every time. You're in the front row of the final. And they've just had a phenomenal year, right there with consistency with anybody.
And Brad, you were at the Albert Lee Appliance Cup at Seafair in Seattle, the last race on the circuit. And I know they were so disappointed they couldn't answer the call in the 3rd heat. And if they would have, they could have garnered enough points to make the final heat on home waters out there on Lake Washington. But I think they'll rebound back real fine here in Detroit.
I'm sure they will. Kelly Stockton he's done just a magnificent job with this boat through all kinds of adversity over the last couple of years. You really have to tip your hat to them. And I'll tell you what, had they started in that 3rd heat and done what they've done all year long, which is start and finish, and made the front row of the final in Seattle, it would have had a definite impact on the podium at the end of the day, because the individual who found himself standing in the number 2 position more than likely would not have run in the final, that being J. Michael Kelly. So a great job with that 440. It is bright orange, and it's right down here below us. They are pitted right next to the U1, Miss Home Street.
Brad, I need to make an announcement. Patrick Hayworth came down from the HRL. Attention in the Grand Prix pit. Grand Prix pit, crane operators, please return to your cranes immediately. Crane operators, please return to your cranes immediately in the Grand Prix pit area. Thank you, crane operators.
That's always a good sign, Jeff Ayler.
And Brad, you mentioned the Guntersville race. We went over that. Of course, Andrew Tate was the winner. Jimmy Shane second. Tom Thompson rounded out the podium in 3rd in the number 11 in Guntersville. And then the boats made their way to Madison, Indiana for the Indiana Governor's Cup. Jimmy Shane picked up the victory in the Home Street Bank. Andrew Tate was 2nd in the Delta Reel Track, and Tom Thompson was 3rd. And Reliable Diamond Tool presents J&D's. Brad, I was in Madison. Jimmy Shane started on the inside of Andrew Tate, and Andrew was right there off Shane's hip, off turn number 1, the back chute, and got a little bit wet, and that was the key to Shane's victory right there off turn number 1 on lap 1.
Yeah, these boats are so fast, Jeff, as our fans are going to see here, especially those two that you're talking about. But they're so fast that you make even the slightest mistake and your competitor's going to be gone. And that's exactly what happened. You're right, you were there, I wasn't, but I saw the video. They came off the corner, and I thought maybe we were going to have another Guntersville, and I was getting all ready to go here. And then just one slight little bobble for just a moment with Andrew coming off that corner, got a little bit wet in the rooster tail and had to pull his foot and veer a little bit to the right, and by the time he got things squared away, he was looking at the transom of that home street, and that's the only view we got for the rest of the laps.
And the third event on the H1 Unlimited Series was the Hapo Columbia Cup in Tri-Cities, Washington. Andrew Tate scored his second win of the season in the U9 Delta Reel Track. Detroit native Calvin Phipps was second in the Oberto Beef Jerky, and J. Michael Kelly was third in the Graham Trucking. And Brad, you were there, and sometimes when the boats get to Tri-Cities, Washington, on that Pacific Northwest swing, things get wild and woolly in the Tri-Cities.
They have been known to get wild and woolly, and maybe it's a bad statement here, but things sometimes tend to heat up, and oh boy, did they heat up in the Tri-Cities, Jeff. The coolest day we had was Friday when we were testing and qualifying, and I think we touched 103 that day, and we ended up inching up toward 107 on Sunday. It was a warm one, but you know what? That's what it always is like in the Tri-Cities. And we tell people over there, if you don't like hot weather, don't go to that boat race, because 99 times out of 100, that's what it's going to be. And even the couple of years I've been there when it's hot, it still gets very hot before the day's over. So great racing over there. Things change, and always a surprise. I used to always say, Jeff, to your point, we go racing back east, and this happens and that happens, but everything changes when they come out west. I know everybody tries a little bit harder sometimes because so many of the race teams are based out there, and they got family and friends there, and everybody sometimes pushes a little bit harder. And when you do, as you know, things can happen. And they did this year in the Tri-Cities. Very competitive regatta on a very, very fast race course. And the Tri-Cities is always something special.
And then Seattle was the last race on the series, the first weekend of August on Lake Washington. It was the Albert Lee Appliance Cup. Andrew Tate, the victor in the U9 Delta Reel Track. J. Michael Kelly second in Graham Trucking, and Brad, Mr. Brian Perkins picked up the third place spot in the U21. Darrell Strom presents Payne West Insurance, and once again Seattle got hot to trot like 14 hands.
Yeah, it did. We started out, we were a little cool on Friday, but it warmed up on Saturday, and boy, by Sunday we had clear blue skies, and it was hot. We were getting up toward 90 and into the low 90s in Seattle, which we don't do a whole lot of. But the racing on the water was very, very good. We had some surprises there. We had some calls, unfortunately, that went against some of the teams that impacted the outcome. And I alluded to it earlier that the home streak, the U1, had kind of had a rough swing. They had a difficult time in Tri-Cities. The boat was fast. That was the older boat. They ran the new boat in Seattle, but they had a call go against them and not go the right way, and it cost them a lot in the final heat. It cost them a first-place finish, and sometimes that happens. But the racing was very, very competitive. It always is in Seattle, and of course that's an important race to everybody because of the history and the tradition there on the Ted Jones Race Course and Stan Sayers Memorial Pit area. But for the home street team, I know they are looking at Detroit to get things back on track.
They sure are, and they've struggled this year. They've had some lane violations and some technical violations.